With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Jeff on with me. He is in the Pacific Northwest. We are talking Bigfoot and Dogman. Jeff, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
So in one of your first emails, you mentioned that you have been into kind of the Bigfoot scene for about 15 or so years, right? So you've been into this for a while.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so where do you remember even how that began? I mean, I realize you're in the Pacific Northwest and people up there tend to embrace Bigfoot quite a bit easier than other parts of the country. But do you remember kind of the catalyst that got you into it?
Yeah, well, the first, I was at the Pix Theater in Woodburn, Oregon when I was young. I guess it was 1972, and I was with a couple of friends, and we were sitting there getting ready to watch a movie, and they showed the clip of the Patterson-Gimlin film. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's real. And my friends all laughed at me and teased me for years about, believing in Bigfoot. But I mean, that's what really triggered everything, was seeing that clip of the Patterson-Gimlin film back when I was, I don't know, I guess 9.
Yeah, that'll do it. I heard that there's somebody working on an even better restoration of that film. I don't know for sure if what that's going to do, if anything, to change people's minds, but always interesting that after all these years, Patty is still very much alive and well in everybody's minds, and the attention that she gets has not waned over all these years.
Yeah, very true. And, so a lot of people still look at that and say that's fake, but, that's whatever. I don't try to convince anybody of anything,
No, because we can't, right, Jeff?
That's right.
It's futile. We know what we know. We have our experiences, and that's okay. We know our truth.
Yep, exactly. And I don't ever try to convince anybody of anything, or in this Bigfoot Dogman world. They just have to figure it out for themselves. Like what I always say is believing is seeing.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm still waiting for my confirmation event, but I don't think that's going to happen while I'm usually now here in Las Vegas, but I guess you never know.
Well, could be a convention sometime down there.
We do have some weird conventions. Maybe he'll be in the Tesla tunnel. Yeah.
But you're welcome to come to the Pacific Northwest anytime. I'll take you out in the woods.
Yeah, I sure miss that place. Goodness gracious. I miss Ohio during some parts of the year there. But yeah, I've definitely missed the Pacific Northwest a whole heck of a lot, just for that specific reason. Just like I said earlier, just the embracing that goes on with Bigfoot up there alone. I don't think Dogman is there yet, but who knows? Maybe that could happen sometime. Well, Jeff, I don't know where exactly you would like to start. You mentioned, as I already said, you do have Bigfoot and you do have Dogman that we need to cover as well. So wherever you wanted to start with that,
okay.
I am ready.
Okay. Well, yeah, the question you asked already, what kind of got me going in this Bigfoot stuff, there's a couple more parts to that. The Patterson-Gimlin film being probably the biggest thing, but also when our family moved from a really rough neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, to a little country old farmhouse in the Willamette Valley, and I was going to be going into the 3rd grade at that time, and so it was like summertime. We moved there, and we loaded up our Volkswagen van and took our first load out there to the new house. And it had been a rental house before that. And we show up with our van full of stuff, and the family that was renting the house hadn't moved out yet. So my stepdad had a few words with the father that was living there. And then the kids, there was probably 4 or 5 kids outside. And so they were talking to us. And one of the older kids said, don't go playing outside late at night, or don't go outside in the dark. You have to look out for that big black thing. something along that line. And I was like, what big black thing? And I'm thinking, a Black Panther or something. I hadn't really thought about Bigfoot at that point. And then when we finally moved into the house, I instantly started having nightmares that this big hairy arm was reaching through my bedroom window trying to grab me. And I didn't like the house. It was also haunted. And I cried every night, and my mom didn't know what to do with me. And eventually the dreams kind of subsided, and I finally kind of fit in to my new school and everything. And things kind of seemed kind of normal after a while. But boy, that initial first several months there, boy, I did not like that house.
Jeff, I find it really interesting that you had nightmares of a hairy arm, but at that point you weren't familiar with Bigfoot. You, in fact, said that you thought, oh, maybe it's a big black cat or something. Like, where did the hairy arm come from, right? In your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And
that's interesting.
And so so a couple of months ago, I was talking to my oldest sister, Judy, and she reminded me, well, I still don't remember it, but we used to have a 1-acre piece of property between like Woodland, Washington and Cougar, Washington. And we were really young back then, and we were in a tent, I guess, and my stepdad's friend was there. And I guess my parents had to take off, go down the road to the store or something. And anyway, so my stepdad's friend, I guess, sat in the tent with us and told us all about Bigfoot. And I don't remember because I was probably 4 years old at the time. So I don't know if any of that stuck subconsciously, or I still don't remember any conversation like that. But my sister pointed it out to me. So that's kind of interesting.
Okay. All right. Wow. See, I love that about that area. Just the story. So he was telling stories of just a legend of Bigfoot, or had he seen Bigfoot? Do you recall that at all?
No, my sister said he was just telling us about Bigfoot. She didn't remember if
Okay.
he had a sighting or experience or anything, but I still don't remember anything about that conversation. Anyway.
So that house was very haunted. What kinds of, just to take a tiny little detour here, what kinds of things was going down in that house?
Oh, okay. So yeah, it was a 2-story farmhouse. The area was called Fargo back in the day. And anyway, the doctor that lived in the area lived in that house. And we figure some people probably died in that house. Well, we were told of a lady named Aunt Edna who had lived in that house. And we actually found an old photograph of her standing next to the bay window outside on the grass where the living room was, outside of the living room window. And my sisters used to share a big bedroom upstairs together, and they would wake up in the middle of the night with this old woman in old early 1900s clothing, standing there watching them sleep.
And you never saw that?
I never saw that, no, but I did have some weird things happen. Time I was living there by myself. My stepdad and my mom got divorced, and so my mom moved out and took the younger kids, and my stepdad was a traveling salesman, so I lived in the house pretty much by myself. And that house made so many creepy noises, and sometimes the piano would play by itself downstairs and weird crap like that. Yeah. And so I would always fall asleep with the TV on or radio on or something. And one night I said to myself, I'm not going to let this house get to me. I'm turning off the TV and I'm going to lay here and I'm going to fall asleep with nothing on. Well, I started hearing something scratching on the side of the house, the exact same spot where Aunt Edna had gotten her picture taken. And so I kind of freaked out, and I went downstairs and I opened up the back sliding door, and I could hear it plain as day, like somebody had a rake scraping the side of the house. And anyway, we had one telephone. The cord was about 2 feet long, and it was you had to dial it. And anyway, I called a bunch of people and finally got a hold of my grandma, and I asked, well, where's my mom? And she said, oh, she was just here. She probably went home to her apartment. Anyway, I thought, well, I'll just lay on the floor down here by the phone in case something happens. I'm kind of telling the Reader's Digest version of this story, but anyway, I was laying on the floor just underneath the bedroom I was sleeping in, and I could hear the sliding door to the closet open up, and I could hear footprints or footsteps on the ceiling above me where the floor was to the bedroom, and I could hear it creak, 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 walking toward the bedroom door. And I grabbed my backpack, threw a bunch of clothes from the laundry room in it, and grabbed the keys to the old Chrysler 300, jumped the fence, and got in the car and took off. And I showed up to my mom's apartment, and one of my older sisters, Jeannie, was home from college. It was around Thanksgiving, I think. And I roll up to the apartment, and my sister Jeannie opened the door, and she goes, "Oh, I thought I heard the Chrysler pull up." And I came in the apartment, and my sister says, "Wow, you're as white as a ghost." And I said, "Don't say that word ghost." Well, then we all sat down and had a big long conversation about all the ghost stories that we had from that house. So anyway, there's my Reader's Digest version of the ghost thing.
Do you know what kind of doctor he was that owned the house?
I guess just the local MD.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Mm.
I can't. I've tried to go back to some of the museums and around there and try to get some more history. A lot of antique shops and stuff like that. Try to get some more history of the place, but it's all gone. I mean, there's really no record of history around there anymore.
Well, thank you for entertaining that slight tangent that I asked you to go down, so you may continue with Bigfoot.
Oh, well, let's see where to go on that. Well, I'll say I did have my first, I guess you call it a daylight sighting, where I can actually, without a bunch of other paranormal weird stuff going on at the same time, I can say, yes, I saw one in daylight. It was July 1st of 2021. I was with my buddy Jim Demain, and we were up in Idaho, up in the Bitterroots, and he has a spot up there that he calls Antler Creek. And so the two of us went up there, and it was during a heat wave we had back then. And we get to the spot, and it was so hot, and the horse flies were biting us, and it was miserable. And so we spent one night there, and that next morning, it was July 1st, and we got up about 6:30 in the morning, had some coffee, and we're BSing, and my buddy Jim says, "You want to get the hell out of here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this isn't working for me." And so we said, "Okay, let's pack up." So it only took us a few minutes to pack our stuff, and we had to follow a Forest Service road that went alongside a creek to get out of there. And anyway, Jim was driving his truck, and I was sitting in the passenger seat, and the creek was on the left. And I took my iPhone out, started recording, and I said, "Watch this. I'm going to record the creek as we drive out of here, because I think we might see something." And I said, "You know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not trying to get proof. This is stupid." So I put the phone away, and then a few moments later, I see this huge thing in the creek, and I said, "Jim, stop! I think I see there's a huge effing moose." And then I said, "I mean, a huge effing Bigfoot standing in the creek." And so he backs up, and he says, "Oh, I see it too." And apparently, when I first saw it, it was bent over, like it was getting water or something. And then when he saw it along with me, the trees kind of blocked it out, so we had to back up a little bit. Well, anyway, when we both saw it, it stood up, and it was tall when it was bent over. And when it stood up, I swear it was like 12 feet tall. Yeah, the shoulders are about as wide as I could spread my arms out. And the sun was just coming up. It was like 7:30 in the morning, and so there's a lot of trees too, so there wasn't direct sunlight on it. But so all we could see was just the dark figure of it. But it was massive. I mean, you could see how ripped it was as far as muscle tone. And I think I probably saw it for 10 full seconds, and Jim probably saw it for 5 seconds. I could be a little off on that. And then all of a sudden, it kind of looked up like it noticed our pickup, and it was exit stage left in a hurry, and it was gone like a swoosh, just gone.
How far were you guys from that?
About 200 feet.
Oh,
Yeah, it was pretty close. The creek had just started going away from us on that section of the road. And so Jim came back a few days later, a week later. He went back by himself with his depth finder, or not depth finder, his distance finder for, hunting deal. And anyway, he said it was like about 200 feet away. He thought it was farther away, and I'm like, no, it was way closer. So we were both kind of in the ballpark, but that was pretty close. I mean, I guarantee you it was 12 feet tall if it wasn't, it was just huge.
See, in 12 feet, and when you're talking about Bigfoot, usually speaking about the Pacific Northwest, you're going, oh, they make them big up there. And it seems that, yes, you guys do, right? Like some of there are other areas of the country that they're large, of course. But a 12-footer in PNW is not that shocking. I mean, and I know that you have other experiences that I don't know the details of, but I mean, if you guys were camping, and that thing walked up next to your tent, I don't care how many guns you'd have around you, wouldn't you fear for your life? That thing was huge.
Well, no, I didn't fear for my life when it walked up to my tent 3 times, 3 nights in a row.
Oh, okay. I'm excited. Yay. Okay.
Hey.
I spoiled it for myself.
Nice lead in. Yeah. So the same area or the same camp we were at a few years prior to that sighting, a big group of us went up there, like 8 or 9 of us. We're all pretty tight as far as a Bigfoot group. Well, Jim had set up this great big canvas tent that he used to use when he went elk hunting. And so I stayed in that tent with him, and I was on the back wall on a cot, and he was on the side wall toward the front. And the first night we were there, everybody went to bed and everybody was out cold sleeping, as far as I knew. And I hear this crack through the woods just a little ways down. There's a dead end gravel road where we were set up at, and I could hear it for maybe, I don't know, maybe 50, not even 50 yards down there, just something crashing through the woods like a freight train. So I wake up, and then I hear something walk up to the edge of my tent, and I sat up in bed in my cot, and I could hear whatever was standing like inches away from me. I could hear it breathing, and the lungs must have been massive because the inhale and exhale was like 5 times longer than what a human would do. And I remember thinking, oh, they're here, and I could hear it breathing. And finally I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to lay back down now. So I laid back down, and then you could hear the little pitter patter of little feet running down the gravel road. And then whatever it was went into the camp area, and the big guy went around the tent and walked down the side of our camp as if to kind of keep an eye on the little ones that ran in. And that happened all 3 nights. The second 2 nights, I didn't hear the crashing through the woods, but I did wake up to the big guy walking and standing next to my tent. And I remember thinking in my mind, where I could hear the breathing, I'm like, gosh, that's got to be at least 10 feet tall. So that was a very interesting 3 nights there. And there was an outhouse right close by, and 2 or 3 of the people in our camp, we were sitting around in chairs during the day, and they saw an adolescent one peeking through the little wooden notched out area where you walk into the outhouse. It was looking between the boards at us. I didn't see it, but so we had that sighting. And then a gal, like the 3rd day, I had already left, but one gal had walked down the gravel road and saw one standing in the creek. So, kind of put those 2 sightings together with what I heard and experienced in the middle of the night, and pretty sure it's safe to say those were Sasquatch people.
Now, did she see a juvenile, or did she see one of the big ones?
She saw one of the bigger ones. I don't think it was juvenile. In fact, I just talked to her yesterday about this. I hadn't spoken to Robin in a long time, but we talked on the phone yesterday about it. She said, I don't think she said it was a huge one, but it was pretty darn big.
So because you guys were obviously all into Bigfoot, and that this Antler Creek area sounds like it's kind of an active area that Jim, your friend, likes to go to, right? So, had you
Right.
guys been doing different things to bring them in or attract attention to yourselves, or do you just kind of show up and do your normal campy stuff?
Well, we learned real quick what doesn't work. We don't bang on wood. We don't whoop and scream. We don't do silly things like that. We don't put up cameras. We just all decided early on, let's go to the woods, have fun, shoot the crap and laugh and maybe play a guitar or sing and just be ourselves and let Bigfoot find us. And once we started doing that, all the magic started.
Have you guys ever thought, oh, let's leave a jar of peanut butter out or any food for them, anything like that?
Yeah, we've done stuff like that. Still kind of do that today sometimes a little bit, but for me it's never really worked, so I don't even mess around with that. But yeah, we just go to the woods, be ourselves, and stuff finds us.
That is too cool that they came in 3 nights in a row. So at night then, that second night, did you decide, oh, well, I'm going to try to, stay up and see if the big dude comes in right next to me again?
No, I just like crashed out, and then it woke me up when I walked up to the tent
Mm-hmm.
all 3 times, and
Wow.
I wasn't trying to plan for anything or trick them or stay up for them. And here's the funny thing, Shannon, it's after the big guy walked up to the tent, the little guys ran in, and then the big guy walked around and went into camp. I laid back down, and after he walked away, and I listened to the coolers open and shut and stuff for a moment or two, I was out like a light. Just went back to sleep like nothing ever happened.
And you know what? And I know you've heard it too. We hear that so much, right? Like what is that? You would think that there would just be so much adrenaline and excitement, especially since that's what you're there for. And then everybody goes, "Nope, I passed right out, slept like a baby." Like, what?
Yeah. Well, that happens quite often
Yeah.
when I'm out there in the woods. It's just the funniest thing. And then, well, so one of the nights, I can't remember if it was the first or second night or whatever, or third night, but okay, so I heard the big guy walk up, little guys ran in, big guy walked away, out like a light. A little while later, I wake up to all these lights flashing all over the place. Like I thought the cops showed up, and I could see through the canvas tent all these orangish, yellowish lights floating all over the place. And it woke me up because of the brightness. And so I sat up and I looked around like, what the hell's going on? And I looked out the front of the tent, and our campfire had started all by itself because we'd poured 5 gallons of water on it before we went to bed. Well, there were 2 flames. They were side by side. I call them the dancing flames, but there were 2 flames side by side, floating up and down from like 3 feet up to 10, 12 feet, side by side, going up and down. And it was super bright. And so I said, "Hey, Jim, wake up. Our campfire just started by itself." He goes, "Huh?" He looks out the tent. Oh, it did. Well, we sat there in our cots. None of us got up. None of us went outside. We sat there and we watched these dancing flames go up and down. I couldn't hear the crackle of the fire, but we sat there for 15, 20 minutes, and then the flames went out and it was pitch black, and we both were snoring instantly after that.
Okay, the
And
fire
next day we
thing.
wake up.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
The fire thing is extremely unique. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that before.
Yeah, I really haven't either. I've been watching and listening to a lot of podcasts and YouTube videos to see if anybody's had this experience, because I kind of want to know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was a ceremony of some kind. Oh, but there's more. So Jim and I would call each other like once a week or every couple of days, and about a year later, I called him up and I said, "Jim, remember the dancing flames?" He's like, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, I've been thinking about it, and a whole year has gone by." I said, there's more to it than just the dancing flames." And he says, "Yep, I was going to call you and talk to you about that too." Well, we both saw, but it took a year to process. We saw around around the dancing flames, there were two huge, like at least 10-foot tall, dark figures walking around the flames in a clockwise manner. And, as it would walk between the tent and the flame, you could see the figure of the body. And there was two of them rotating the whole time. So we don't know if that was Sasquatch for sure or some other thing that I'm not going to mention the name because it's not good luck. But
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was that kind of blows my mind that happened.
That is cool. That is so cool. Plus the orangish, yellowish lights that you saw. So did you ever get to see the lights, not just through the tent, but out through the door while you guys had the fire situation going on? Like, were they orbs, or did you ever see them not through the wall of the tent?
Well, yeah, as soon as I looked out the tent, I think the lights that woke me up, they were just not there anymore.
Okay.
Or I wasn't paying attention. I don't know, but
Right.
no, I never saw them again. Never saw them that night.
So, and you might even get to this, and maybe I'm jumping ahead once again, but you already kind of hinted at this, but do you think there's a chance that that's just separate phenomena going on while there's also Bigfoot in the area, like it's all attracted to each other, or that's just a thin spot on the continent, whatever it is? Or do you think that that's all tied in to the same thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I go back and forth on, is like, was it Bigfoot related? Was it something else? I mean, I think it's all tied in together anyway, but I can't say for sure that was a Sasquatch encounter, but I want to say it is. I have a witness, and even everybody else that was in their tents, they heard and saw the light from the fire. They actually heard the crackling of the fire. I didn't, but they didn't see what we saw directly. Here's the other funny thing. My buddy Jim swears that the tent flap was not open. Yet we could see it as though we're looking right through the tent at a like it was right there, right in front of us. But the flap wasn't even open.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that kind of makes it seem like it was more of a type of a weird spiritual phenomenon of some kind.
And that you guys were meant to see it for some reason.
Yes. And that's the, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Jeff, you go.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, we were blessed enough to have them whoever it was, do this ceremonial fire thing. But what was it? I usually don't try to explain things because I had this experience. Here's what happened. You guys can interpret it any way you want, believe it or not, whatever you want. But that's the one thing that I really want to know. What was that? Why were we shown that? What does it mean? I don't know.
Did the flames ever themselves, I know that there was the dark figures around, did the flames themselves ever turn into any kind of a shape that you could discern and put your finger on?
No, they just were going up and down and doing what flames do. I mean, they were pretty wide flames, maybe like 3 feet wide each, maybe more at the bottom. But they just went up and down and kind of, like those blow up figures you might see at a fair or outside of a store or something, where they got the blower that blows it up and the thing's flipping and flopping around at the top because all the air is getting pushed up through it. It was kind of like that in a way, but they were going up and down.
What did you and Jim, if you can recall, were you emotional watching this? Did you ever feel scared, or did you feel happy? Nope. Like, was there any, overarching emotion during that thing?
No, not at all. I just sat there and watched. It was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And we just sat there for 15 to 20 minutes. I don't think we said a word to each other. We just watched it the whole time. And then as soon as the flames dropped down and it was pitch black again, Jim says I was snoring before he was. And I swear he was snoring before I was. That's our only difference in that whole account. He thought I fell asleep first, but we were out like a light instantly after the fire went down.
That's incredible. That happens so often. And this next question is not to say that this is what you guys should have been doing, because I just firmly believe that even if you're in the flesh and blood camp, 100% for Bigfoot, they can hear or sense or see or whatever, a trail cam, or if you have any kind of a thing like that up, they know that it's there, just like you would know something different in your living room if somebody stuck something on a wall. But did you guys have anything, running? Was that your MO to come in with any cameras or trail cams or anything like that? Or were you just there to experience it?
Yeah, we were just there to experience it. We don't fiddle around with cameras and stuff. That's why when Jim and I had the Bigfoot sighting in 2021, I put my phone down. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not trying to get evidence. I don't care. And then sure as heck, we saw a Bigfoot.
It's like it heard you saying that in your mind.
It seemed like it. Yeah.
Like, oh, the camera's down. I can come out now.
I know. I make a lot of comments on people's YouTube videos who are, freaking out because they got Bigfoot on their property and they don't know what to do. I said, well, if you don't want them on your property, just put up cameras.
Right. No, I love that about the way that you guys seem to come at this, is that you're not going in and throwing a trail cam up on every tree to prove it to who. Like, look, before we started, we're talking about the Patty film and how even now it's, as far as we know, the best video that anyone's ever captured of a Bigfoot, but you can't prove it. We don't know for sure, and people still hotly contest that. So I sometimes do not understand why people are so hard up for, I have to get it on film. I have to. For what? For who? You had the experience. You know what you saw. That should be good enough. That's where I would come at it from. So I love that you guys kind of have that MO when you go out. You're like, you know what? We want them to come in. We want to have the experience. That way you can see it with your own eyes. And who cares about anybody else?
Yeah, exactly. And my close friends and I, we've been in enough Bigfoot forums online where people are showing pictures of proof and whatnot. And you could have a picture of a Bigfoot having breakfast with you over coffee, and you can show it to somebody and they'll say, it's fake. I don't believe that. So why even bother?
Yep. That's right. Yeah, if you want to sit and watch fights all day, just go into, well, really anything, a UFO, Dogman, Bigfoot. People are just at each other's throats sometimes, literally, over this stuff. So it's for you, which that's really nice. I like that you guys have that approach to things.
Yeah, we learned that pretty quick when we all got into it pretty hardcore. It's like, okay, we watch enough TV shows, if you will, that never found Bigfoot, so we knew what not to do,
What about everybody else in the group? Some of them experienced some things. You had the woman that was lucky enough to see Sasquatch. What about some of the other folks? Did they, around this time with this interesting fire situation, did everybody, and it's hard to know because they weren't in your tent, but did they also say, oh my goodness, we fell right asleep after that too?
No, I need to maybe reach out and get their story again on what they went through on that. But like Robin, she could hear and see the light from the flames, but I don't think she was scared because she's had other experiences, paranormal and whatnot. And the other gal, Maggie, I think she just noticed the fire and the crackling of the fire too. I think they might have been in the same tent. I can't remember. But they weren't scared. And then we had another guy named Ernie. He took some sleeping pills because he was afraid of all this stuff. So he was out cold. He didn't witness anything. and then our other friend Greg, he was in a tent by where the big guy had walked around my tent and walked right by his tent. Well, he was scared. He was scared, I think, every night we were there. And he actually had a nightmare vision type thing of some really super tall white thing, like I'm going to call it a skinwalker, but he was having bad nightmares about a skinwalker. So he was the only one that was afraid. None of us other people were scared one bit.
I feel bad for the gentleman that takes the sleeping pills because he's so scared.
Yeah.
I mean, does he? Not to sound any way about it, but why does he go out? Why does he choose to go out there? Basically.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, he'd been in the woods with us a few times and went on some road trips and stuff. Bigfoot wasn't really his thing, but he liked to camp.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think the Bigfoot stuff scared him, so he didn't want anything to do with that.
Well, I mean, who could blame him? We've heard a lot of stories that are not exactly light and love about Bigfoot. So, but that said, you've hammered home this point that we've heard a lot is that we had this experience, we go to sleep. We have this experience, we sleep like a baby. I've had people on that are literally surrounded and think they're going to perish by the hands of whatever is surrounding them, and they go to sleep after. You know what I mean? It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, I think they have the ability to knock us out and dummy us down or something, you know?
Did you guys ever have, I know you don't place cameras up and things, but I'm sure you had your cell phones on you, things like that. Did batteries die or anything strange like that?
No, I don't think anybody mentioned anything about that kind of stuff. And for the most part, our cell phones were not out and
right.
And they might have been on, but plus we had weapons on us. We had guns on our sides, and we told, we explained to anyone who was listening that these aren't here for you guys. We're just trying to protect us from other bad humans and maybe cougars or something. But so having weapons didn't just detract them either. So.
Well, you got that right. People are definitely the scariest thing in the woods. Did you guys, you would show up and that was part of your MO to say out loud, these guns are not for you guys? Probably, especially in the first few visits, right? You just say out loud.
Oh yeah, you say it out loud or say it to yourself, but I think they hear you either way.
Interesting. And the two huge dark figures rotating clockwise around this fire sounds so very ritualistic, right? That's kind of strange. I don't even know what to make of that. What do you and Jim think about that aspect of it specifically?
Well, he thinks it was a different type of entity that I'm not even going to mention the name. I think you know what I'm talking about. And I want to stick with it was the forest people doing this for some reason. I'm going to stick with that one because I feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah, because you don't want to end up like the other gentleman is like, sleeping pill time. I don't want to see nothing.
Exactly.
Who could blame him?
Yeah,
you wake up, there's things walking around a fire that you poured. You said you poured 5 gallons of water on that thing. It should have been well out until you decided to light that thing again.
Yeah, well, the next morning after we woke up and shook the cobwebs off and looked at each other and went, "Oh my gosh, you guys come here. You got to hear what happened last night." And we all it's funny because we wake up and get our coffee and we're awake for an hour or so. And it's like, oh shit, remember what happened last night? It was a funny, weirdest thing how that happened too.
Wow.
Where you think you'd wake up and instantly remember everything. But so the next morning we checked the fire pit. Well, there was a paper plate, I think a plastic spoon or a fork and a cup in the fire pit, and it hadn't been touched by anything.
Oh, how could that be?
Well, because the fire wasn't real, I guess.
Wow, cool. Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, and I'm not even, now that I think of it, I looked at some old pictures of the tent and my cot and the opening, because I actually took a picture of the opening of the tent from where I was at, and I found it on my computer recently. I don't even think the fire that we saw was from the fire pit itself. I think it was just there somewhere. And there was actually a picnic table kind of in the way. So, I don't think it was a real fire. We saw what we saw. Everybody had some type of vision surrounding the fire thing. Was it real? Well, I guess it was real because we saw it.
Right.
But what does it mean? What does real really mean?
I guess by the time you're talking about orbs or will-o'-the-wisps or whatever you want to call the lights, two dark figures ritualistically walking around this quote-unquote fire, right? Who's to say the fire was ever really there? That's so cool. But then again, it's that whole thing, but why? Why did you guys, why are you allowed to see it, essentially, right? If they can make you sleep, you could have slept through the whole night, all 3 nights, and not had a single experience with anything at any time.
That's right. Yeah. So if any of your listeners have any idea what that could have been, I would really love to hear about it.
Yeah, that's so cool because several episodes ago, I talked to he hosts XV Planus, and they went out to the Skinwalker. It was like on a campsite adjacent to Skinwalker Ranch, right? And the fire ended up creating essentially a symbol. It almost looks kind of like a
Oh,
light bulb. And
oh,
and he had all kinds of things to share, but that was the one thing he kept going back to. Like, this was such a strange, unique, profound
mm,
experience. If anybody's ever had anything like, so that's why I was kind of
yeah,
like, oh my goodness, like I wonder if the what does it mean? It's the old potatoes on the plate thing. What does it mean? But I don't
yeah,
know if we're ever meant to know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wondered why you would ask me that question if I had seen an image or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really awesome. That's really cool. I love it. Um, we I want to get back to those 3 nights, but let me skip ahead a few years where it was just Jim and I again at Antler Creek, and we had taken his big pickup truck with a camper on the back of it, and Jim liked to sleep sitting up, and so he was sleeping in the front passenger seat of his pickup, and I was up in the camper on the bed, and all the curtains were closed tight except the one next to me looking the opposite direction of where Jim was. Well, I started seeing these weird lights and shadows. And I looked out the window and I could see the shadow of the front of the pickup. There were like several shadows, like somebody that there was a little hillside right next to us on the side that Jim was sleeping on. And it was like there were maybe like 4 or 5 people with flashlights moving their flashlights around on the side of the pickup because you could see all these shadows moving independently, but they were all shadows of the front of the truck. And I felt Jim move around in the truck, and I thought, well, maybe he's got a flashlight looking at something in the pickup. And I watched it for a while, and I actually got out because I had to take a leak, and I actually got out of the back of the camper, and there was nothing there. Well, the next morning he asked me, well, did you have a flashlight shining on me? Because last night I woke up to these lights all over the place, and I told him, no, I thought you had the flashlight. So we didn't. I don't think we really saw orbs or anything, but we could see where the light was coming from and the shadows of the truck.
Mm.
So that was kind of weird. But that's the only closest thing to an orb that I've seen or can talk about, from personal experience.
That area just, and you did kind of
Yeah,
mention in your email as well that you just feel like certain areas do have a darkness about them, but this particular area, Antler Creek, you don't feel like that's like the Chalachi area that you mentioned, right? Like this seems different here because you guys don't
yeah,
have bad experiences here.
right, right, yeah, yeah. I've never had anything but really cool experiences there. Well, I can tell you another crazy event that happened those 3 nights we were there. Can't remember if it was the second night or whatever, but so I hear the big guy walk up to the edge of the tent. Little ones ran in. The big guy walked away. I fell back asleep. Well, after a while, I felt like I was in a dream within a dream, and I was like had sleep paralysis, and I wanted to wake up because something was going on, and I didn't know what was going on. Well, I had been having this dream that I could see my DNA strand in my mind, and I was riding on it like a roller coaster, and it was all my DNA. I'm just riding my DNA for I don't know how long the dream was, but and then I kind of felt the presence of somebody, and like somebody was stroking my hair saying, it's okay, Jeff, don't worry, everything's fine, you're okay. And I was trying to wake up, and I felt like Captain Kirk or Spock must fight through, must wake up. And kind of finally I was coming to, and I could feel something soft on my left cheek. I felt somebody stroking my hair and telling me everything's okay. And then I reached my hand up, and I held onto the left ring finger of a hand that was way bigger than mine, and I was holding onto that finger, and then I held onto that hand. We we interlocked our fingers, and I sensed it was a female. And then I remembered, and then I knew that there was something soft on my cheek. And so I pulled my head back because I wanted to see what it was. And it was a female Sasquatch. And then bam, I was out like a light.
And again, more than likely, the tent wasn't even open in any conventional sense, correct?
Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of felt like I was being brain scanned and some type of maybe genetic repair done to me.
So, I've heard that too. That was another recent episode. It was in the Mogollon Rim area, and somebody goes out, they have some health issues, and they get zapped or scanned, like you just said, and they feel a whole lot better, and the results stick.
Yes.
So, did you have some kind of health? I'm not trying to get any personal or specific, but was there changes after that for you somehow?
Well, not that I really noticed. Not really. I think something changed inside of me, like I was waking up. I've heard about the Great Awakening, for years, and I think I finally was like opening my eyes to the truth and reality about all the lies we've been told about our history and pretty much everything, and so I think it changed something inside of me, I think. But you're talking about the Mogollon Ridge, if I'm saying it right. Did you ever speak to a guy named Chris who had healing done?
Yep. Okay. That was Chris.
Yep. I met him last summer.
Really?
Great guy. Super neat guy. Yeah. We keep in touch a little bit.
Yeah. He's very, very nice man.
Yes. I think I'm going to see him again this summer at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon in July. That's where I met him last summer.
Yeah, it just seems like, and I'm always, I'm half joking, I guess. I'm always like, we need a good apocalypse and wipe us out and give the land back to the creatures and maybe the very old things that have been here a lot longer than we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I experienced, well, I didn't experience it, but if we're talking about healing, I used to put on a lot of get-togethers and camping trips. I had this group with me, and Jim Demain was with me again, and we had another guy named Tom. I don't think I'll mention his last name, but he's a pretty well-known guy in the Bigfoot community. So Tom showed up in not very good health, and I think he had some heart issues, and I looked at Jim and I said, we might be hauling Tom out of here in the back of your pickup. He looks like he's close to death. And anyway, so a gal named Sue was kind of looking over him. And so they slept in the same tent together. Well, they woke up to a buzzing noise and a light outside of out of their tent. And there was a buzzing noise going on. And Sue woke up and said, Tom, do you hear that? He goes, yeah, it's coming from my chest. Well, anyway, that night, Jim and I and Ernie was on sleeping pills again, so he didn't experience any of this. But Jim and I heard Tom and Sue get out of the tent like in the middle of the night, walk down the little bit of a hill and they would stop and then they would chat. They'd walk, they'd stop and chat. And I couldn't make out what they were saying. It was like if you were listening to a conversation through a wall with, you got a drinking glass up against the wall and you're trying to listen through the wall. It was kind of like that. Couldn't understand exactly what they were saying, but you could tell it was kind of a bit of concern in the voice. Well, they walked all the way through the camp on down the road. Next morning, Tom was the last person to get out of their tents. And I said, hey, Tom, what were you and Sue doing walking around last night in the middle of the night? And he had to use a walker at that time to even walk. He said, well, this is the first time I've been out of my tent all night. I'll tell you guys, I'll talk about it later. So that's a couple hours later, he finally talked about how he had this healing done on his heart. Well, I think we were there 2 or 3 nights. And I believe he had work done on his heart all 3 of those nights. The day we left, he looked like he was 30 years younger and he didn't need the walker anymore. It was amazing.
And he said he had not been out of the tent at all that entire night. And you know that that is not, that cannot be possible because of the voices that you heard.
Well, I believe that he wasn't out of the tent at all. I think we heard something else. I don't know if it was a couple of, forest people mimicking them and making it sound like they were outside. Because this time, I actually unzipped one of the windows of the tent and looked outside. And what I saw, my whole time frame, it got all screwed up, because when I was looking through the tent, it was daylight out, and I could see these ravens playing with a empty potato chip sack. And I watched them do that for a little while. Then I went back to sleep. But it was the middle of the night. It was pitch black. So I don't know if I dreamt that or really saw that or what. It is what it is. But everybody in the camp heard them walking through and talking, and nobody could make out what they were saying. So there was probably 8 or 9 of us that witnessed that.
Yeah, that's like exactly what Chris speaks about, right? When they go out there. That's pretty fascinating. And Tom still to this day, he seems to, feel better at least than he did before.
Yeah, I think he seems to be doing really good these days. Yeah. And this has been 15 years, probably, maybe 12, 15, something like that.
Jeff,
yeah.
I ask other people this that go out with like a more group situation to a certain area. And you may not have even thought about this, or you may not have an answer, and that's fine. But my question is, have you guys found that depending on who goes out there with you, essentially the group dynamics, who the group is made up of, that the activity shifts? Does it seem to shift? And of course you wouldn't know because you can't replicate the same thing and take this person out and see blah, blah, blah. But do you think that has anything to do with it?
Yeah. I think you have to all be like-minded and agree that you're not going to talk politics or religion or anything that could stir up any kind of negativity. And I don't like being in a group with people who want to get evidence or shoot and kill and get a body. And usually when those type of people are with us, nothing happens.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That definitely does, especially if they can, people say they can vibrate just at a different level. It's not that strange. It's just we can't do what they can do, right? So if they can tell, like, oh, this guy is gonna have his phone recording on secret, or he's looking to discharge a firearm to try to get at one of us, like, good luck with that. Plus, they probably laugh about that, but still, it's just the intention is wrong there.
Yeah, they know your intentions. And then, there are people that did say that, they pulled a weapon on one and they had a very negative experience.
Yeah, I bet.
It's kind of a reflection of you is what you're going to experience, I think.
They'll be like poor Ernie and popping the sleeping pills from now on, or just move like me. And they're like, oh, I'm going to live in the desert the rest of my life. I ain't going in the woods anymore.
Exactly. So, yeah, I will say, though, those 3 nights that I've been talking about in the woods in Idaho, when we first showed up there as a group, I took off by myself and I walked around and I gave some blessings and thanks. And I was feeling all this love and joy in my heart. And I felt at peace with myself. And I thanked them for letting us be here and that kind of thing. And then I grabbed my guitar, and I can't play guitar very well and I can't sing very well. But I went up in the hill next to the camp and I had the sheet music to John Lennon's Imagine. And I sang and played that song for them. And as soon as I hit the last note, I heard this voice in my head say, that was nice, but let's hear something of your own. And I looked around, I'm like, okay. So I made up some song and made up some lyrics and sang it to them. And I got done and grabbed my sheet music and walked back down to the tent, put my guitar away, then joined the rest of the people sitting around BSing. And then that was the first hour or two that we were there. And then, like I said, just had the most incredible 3 nights after that.
You should like leave the, not that you actually need to leave the guitar out, I guess, because they can just reach through the tent, but you should be like, all right, your turn. Now play me a song. I don't know. It's just like you
Yeah.
mentioned the piano playing in the haunted house. So I went, ugh, because it just sounds so creepy. I don't know if you'd really want to hear a guitar strumming, you know, in the dead of night, like off somewhere in the distance.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
some people like to leave the drums out and,
Mm-hmm.
see if they'll play it. Oh, and speaking of drums, I've got another interesting story that just happened just a few months ago involving drums. So you heard Henry Franzoni passed away a few months back.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a friend of mine. He'd been to my house. I did a paranormal Bigfoot conference in 2012. He spoke at that. And we had talked a few times. We weren't like super good friends or anything, but we knew each other. Well, I heard he passed away, and we have a little area up out of Cottage Grove by Cottage Grove Lake up in the woods that some other friends of mine had been doing their research on and had some crazy experiences happen to them. Well, anyway, so my Bigfoot partner Alicia and I had been going to the spot for a while, and she had talked about having a spirit box, and I'd never used one or really knew much about it. So we planned to go out there this one day a few months ago. I think it was might have been in fall, like 3 months ago, probably. And I said, hey, bring your spirit box. I want to check it out. So we're up there in the woods, sitting in our chairs on the gravel road. And I said, let's try to see if Henry Franzoni has a message for us. So we use a spirit box, and I was asking questions like, hey, Henry, are you there? Hey, Henry, can you play your drums? Hey, Henry, can you play bolero? And she wasn't getting any answers through the spirit box. She had her headphones on. And then at one point, after about 20 minutes of trying, I kind of waved her off. I said, let's forget about it. It's not working. And she agreed. And I said, well, I got to take a leak. I'm going to walk down the road this way. And she says, well, I got to do the same thing. I'll walk down the other way. Well, while I was doing my business, I heard a snare drum going off in the woods. That snare drum was playing. And I finished what I was doing, and I turned around and started walking back toward our chairs. And I see Alicia walking back down the road toward me. We both had our arms up in the air like, you're not going to believe what I just heard. And she's like, she was saying, I'm hearing the drums. Well, she heard the bass drum at first. And then when she turned around and then she saw me, she heard the snare drum and the bass drum playing at the same time.
Oh.
And it was like, okay, Henry Franzoni came through.
That's cool. That's a cool story.
Yeah, it was really neat. So anyway.
Well, now I'm looking at, because I jotted down some of the stuff from your email. And was there anything else from the 3 nights that you wanted to share? Was that all the Bigfoot stuff?
I think that was pretty much the stuff that happened to me. I can't think of anything else right now.
Well, yeah, if you want to talk about ye old Dogman.
Oh, yeah, that's what attracted, that's how I got in contact with you. So I guess I saw a comment you made on X or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our new Dogman doc came out, I think that's the one that you commented on.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Well, okay, so I was living up in the Yakult, Washington area, right along the East Fork of the Lewis River. I had a really cool 5.5, 6 acre place. And this was about 10 years ago, I think. And my commute to work was 42 miles one way. So this one morning, I believe it might have even have been like the first day of summer, because it was like toward the end of June. And so it was like one of the longest days of the year. And anyway, I'm driving to work, and it's very rural out there. And I'm going down the road, and I got this kind of a long stretch. We had a little bit of curves in it, a little ways down. Well, I see something, I don't know, gosh, it could have been like half a mile away, maybe. It was in my lane running toward me on all fours. And I'm like, what in the heck is that? It's too big to be a dog or a cat, I thought maybe it's an elephant, because the the front legs looked like they were really low to the ground, and they were just pumping, and they looked really big. And this thing was hauling ass, pardon my French. But I mean, it must have been going as fast as I was going. And it was trucking right along. And then I kind of lost sight of it for a second because I hit these little curves. And then it was all straightaway after that. And I thought, this thing is racing me to these driveways up here on the right. There was like 3 driveways off to the right. And I speeded up because I wanted to cut it off before it could get away from me. Well, its head was down pretty low, so I couldn't really make out what it was. And, I know there was a llama farm right down the road, but it wasn't a llama. And I actually went back and asked them like the next day if any of their llamas had gotten out recently, and they said no. So I speed up to cut this thing off, and it just darted off to its left, to my right, up a driveway. And I had to slam on my brakes and back up, and I rolled down my passenger window so I could look to my right and see what it was. And it went into a driveway where the driveway went up just a little, sloped up a little bit, and there were like bushes and trees on each side of it. So although it was starting to get light out, it was really dark inside that driveway. And I could see its figure, a dark figure in there. And it was, to me, I swear it was a dog man. And it had its rear facing me, but it had the front part of his body turned. So he had his head all the way around with his snout looking at me. And it was really tall. I mean, the back of it must have been, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet high at least. And I got chills, and it looked at me like, nah, you can't get me. And I just took off. I floored it and got the hell out of there. It really freaked me out. I was kind of scared for the first time, but I didn't really get to see a super clear vision of it because it was a little bit dark inside that driveway, but there was definitely something there.
See, and you left first in that instance because, as you say, for the first time, look at you have like 12-foot tall Bigfoot, and they're coming in like right next to your tent. You were never once frightened, but you were in a vehicle, and you took off first. Like, bye.
I sure did. So I got to work a little bit early, and I always went a little bit early in case there was traffic, and I was getting coffee. So I messaged like 3 or 4 of my friends, told them what I had just seen. And one of the gals gave me the number to a guy named Vic Cundiff. I guess he's got a lot of Bigfoot and Dogman shows. And so I actually spoke to him, and I don't think he's ever seen one, but he's heard a lot of people describe them. And so after talking on the phone for a while, he said, yeah, Jeff, I believe you actually saw a real big Dogman. And so I don't know, it is what it is. I can't say for sure, but it sure seemed like it.
I mean, since you have seen it with your own 2 eyes, what do you think that thing is? I mean, do you think it's flesh and blood? Do you think it comes and pops in and out of portals, or it's something demonic? Well, I mean, you're not going to know, but what's your opinion?
I think all the above. I mean, just like I believe this Sasquatch people are, spiritual, they're flesh and blood. They can come in and out. They can, do all kinds of neat things. I think Dogman's kind of the same, but I really feel like Dogman's not very good. I feel like the Sasquatch people and Dogman aren't exactly the best of friends.
Yeah, I think Bigfoot definitely thinks that Dogman are just big old jerks. Like, there's got to be ancient turf wars about, look, this is not your area, stay the hell out.
Well, yeah, and that leads me to the Chalachie area in Washington State. Tum Tum Mountain.
I'm not, but I am familiar with the Chalachie area. But yeah, in your email you mentioned that. Where is Tum Tum area? I don't know.
It's near Amboy, Washington, and then there's a great big store, the Chalachie store, and you can see Tum Tum Mountain from there. It looks like a pyramid. You can Google Tum Tum Mountain, and it looks like a pyramid.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, and if you look up the meaning of Yakult, it's a Indian term for like a really, negative devil type meaning to it. Can't remember off the top of my head what the definition is, but it's not very good. Anyway, so there's a campground called, oh geez, slipped my mind, Country Creek, not Country Creek. It'll pop into my head, but there's a campground. If you go past Tum Tum Mountain, you go out there, and a young gal was camping there with some friends, decided to do a vision quest, and she was reportedly wearing nothing but a backpack and maybe sandals, something like that. But anyway, she went into the woods, found again, and that was at that campground. So I had a group of people at my house for the weekend, and we decided to go check out that campground. Well, as we drive down into that campground, there's a creek on the side of the campground too. We're driving down to that campground, and man, I got the eerie, sick feeling of yuck and darkness and evil. And we all got out. One person had to use the restroom, and we all stood there for a while. No one really said anything. I think we talked about the missing girl a little bit and the facts that we knew about the situation and how she was never found. And we ended up we all were like, hey, let's get out of here. So we were driving out, and I said, did anybody else feel anything? And we all felt the same dreaded gloom of that campground. And as soon as we went around to another Forest Service road, and as soon as we turned right onto this other Forest Service road, everybody felt happy. We felt light again, because there was like this heavy darkness weighing on us. And as soon as we turned right on this other gravel road, we all went, oh my gosh, did you feel that? It was like the weight of the world came off our shoulders, and it was like back to, positive feelings again. And then a week or two later, I took another group of friends, did the exact same thing, and they all felt the same thing.
Yeah, and the irony is, Jeff, that your audio has been absolutely perfect this entire time until you started to talk about Tum Tum Mountain. You'll hear it, because I won't, it just goes a little bit robotic in a couple of places and pauses, which it hasn't done single iota this entire time we've been chatting. So now I'm not saying that that's anything. I'm just saying it's interesting timing. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's happened to you before with other guests.
Yes, it has. Yes, it does. I would say,
if there's something. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead.
No, you.
Well, if there's anything you want me to go over again, let me know. But yeah, it's weird how that happens, huh?
No, it came out okay. It wasn't. I almost interrupted you once because it kind of really went robotic, but I can understand everything that you were saying. So everyone else will too. But I'm like, oh, here we go. He's talking about a dark place, and here I am having some issues. They're like, you're not going to talk about this, Jeff. So what goes on with you guys then? And before I move off that, did you have anything else to add with that?
Well, the second group of people I think I took, my friend Tish was with us, and she's an empath and, a little bit psychic, I'd say. And she said, oh yeah, this area right over there, there's Dogman and other entities that are there. And the area over here to the right where we all felt good is definitely like the boundary. And so the Bigfoot people don't go to that dark area, and the evil entities don't go into the people's area. I mean, there was like a clear division, like a boundary. You could just feel it.
Well, and isn't that a sad twist of ironic fate that this young woman goes out on a vision quest and disappears?
Yeah, exactly. And there was another area called Sunset Falls where, Wes Germer had some crazy experiences where I guess a church group was up there, and one guy wanted to make a phone call, and he grabbed a cell phone and tried to walk to some spot where he could get cell reception, and never did be found again. And that's only a few miles of the crow flies from this other campground.
And he was out there with other people. He wasn't out there by himself.
Well, he ended up being by himself, separating
just
from the group.
To go my goodness.
Just to use the phone. Yeah. So I've been up in both of those areas, and I got to tell you, Shannon, that's really strange up there. Very strange areas up there.
I mean, that's just straight up missing 411 type stuff. Like, don't be first in line, don't be last in line. It just seems like people are just barely out of sight or out of earshot.
Yeah.
And a grown man goes missing. What the hell happened to him?
Yeah. Just without a trace.
No.
Yeah.
That is so freaking creepy. I can't even begin to say. And I have so many of those kinds of cases in my mind, and you can't help but run through some of those when you're in the wilds of the U.S.
Yeah. I do a lot of praying and asking for protection and surround myself with the light and love, and do a lot of that when I'm in the woods, especially by myself.
You do go out quite a bit by yourself?
Actually, like the last few years, I don't really go in the woods by myself much anymore. I might drive by myself, but I don't like getting out when I'm by myself. I went from not having any fear to maybe having a little bit of more respect of what could happen negatively. And I don't know. I don't even like, when I'm out with my friend Alicia, I don't even really like losing sight of her, for obvious reasons. I just feel like, why take a chance?
Well, and how much did actually seeing a dog man, or as close to a dog man description as you can get, how much did that change your opinion on going out into the woods?
It doesn't really keep me out, but it does give me a healthy respect that, everything in the woods isn't all lovey-dovey, going to come up and give you a hug, and, we're going to have a love fest and, and stuff. There's definitely some evil out there, and you gotta respect it, and you gotta protect yourself.
I mean, somebody like Ernie, is he aware of, dogman creatures, and does he know that you actually saw one of those things? And I don't know, it just seems like and I totally love and respect the fact that he's like, well, I still want to go out camping and be around my friends and all that. I totally get that. But I mean, he obviously trusts you. And so if you say, Ernie, I actually saw this thing and here's what I saw. And granted, that wasn't like in your camping area or anything, but they're out there, obviously. I mean, it just seems like some people would be like, okay, I'm done forever camping. I'm never going back out again. He was already stressed out,
Yeah, he passed away a year or so ago, but yeah, he was a funny guy, because he just, I don't want to hear that. Don't talk to me about that. He just, so why are you here?
Right. He just wanted to camp with his buddies. That's cool. I respect that.
Yeah, just he's a real interesting character. He was really good friends, long time good friends with Jim. That's how I met him. So yeah, he was an interesting character.
Well, and Jeff, you mentioned that I respect you so much for doing this. You actually went and talked to the folks that own the llama farm and said, "Hey, you what's going on over here? Is anybody missing, or anybody getting slaughtered?" Or because it does make you wonder, why was he there? Because whether or not they do jump through portals, it does seem like they do have to eat when they're here, I guess. I don't know. If they're not eating souls, I don't know. But yeah, I do like the fact that you went and checked on that. You said, hey, any problems here?
Well, I mean, it was the one thing that ran through my mind, is that a llama. And I had to do my due diligence to, so I can honestly say, okay, it wasn't that. I don't know what it really was. I think it was a dog man. I think, of course, I didn't get a picture of it, but in my mind, it was a dog man. But I had to at least negate what it wasn't a llama. So at least I can take that off the list,
That'd be a screwed up llama, wouldn't
it? Yeah, it was.
That'd be one for the Guinness book. Hey, when you slammed on the brakes, reversed, and it's in the driveway just giving you that face like, screw you, buddy, you ain't,
Yeah.
How far away do you think you were from it at that point?
Ooh, I want to say pretty close. I mean, like maybe 15 feet at the most.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Yeah. I mean, it was big. It was really big, and I could see its body shape, no problem. And I honestly could tell you that I could see its rear end, and how a dog can twist its front part of the body and move its snout around to look back at you. It was just like that.
So you got, I mean, I'm sure that you weren't looking at it for very long. It's hard to say, when you go back, if it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, blah, blah, blah. I mean, did you see a snout or teeth or, what did its face look like?
Yeah, see that's kind of hard to make out because it was kind of dark inside that
Right.
driveway area. But I recall seeing teeth and like a smirk on its snout. And I knew it had two eyes. And I think I could even make out the ears. I mean, it was definitely dog-like for sure, but it was not any ordinary dog. I guarantee you that.
He wasn't wearing any pants or anything, I hope, was he?
And I didn't see any.
That's good. I mean, I've
Yeah.
I've taken reports where they're in a shirt or it's looking like they're wearing something, and you're going, well, what in the hell is that? So what about
Yeah, I heard that podcast.
Yeah. I mean, one gal saw it, and she's like, I'm pretty sure it was wearing like a tattered red shirt. And you're like, what the
Yeah.
hell is going on out there? And hey, that's what she saw. I'm not discounting it. I wasn't there, but it's not the first time I've heard that. So could you discern? And again, I know it was dark back there. He's under all this foliage at this point. What about a tail, like a dog-like tail, anything like that?
Yeah, I don't remember if I could see a tail or not because I was looking straight up
At
at
the
its butt,
face, yeah, I can imagine.
and then the body was turned around.
Yeah.
The front end was turned around, looking back at me. So if the tail had been wagging or sticking up, I might have caught it, but I don't remember seeing a tail at that point.
So it's standing on two legs at this point, and you're only 15 feet away. You got a gauge on how tall it was then?
Well, no, it was on all fours when it turned.
Oh,
When it was on all fours, and it had it. I was looking straight at its butt, but the body was turned and his head was turned, looking back at me.
I see. I'm sorry. My mind filled in that it had gone up on two legs that whole time. I'm sorry. That is my own brain filling in things that it should not. Okay, I gotcha. But
yeah, but I would say it was 4 feet tall at least. Its back was at least 4 feet off the ground, at least.
Oh boy, if that thing had stood, and you didn't even want to be there at that point, it was only on all fours. Imagine it was standing up and you're only 15 feet from it. You probably would have had to maybe crouch to see. I don't know. Like if you're in your vehicle, what kind of a vehicle were you driving? Was this a truck or a car?
It was a car. It was a Saab 9.3 turbo.
Saabs. I love Saabs. Yeah, I bet that thing would have just been towering. I'm sure you're slightly happy that it was not completely facing you at that point. I mean, at least it was looking back, but it wasn't, as far as it might have been smirking, but it wasn't this huge threatening pose like it was going to jump through the passenger window.
Yeah, but I couldn't get that window up fast enough, and that turbo kicked in like you wouldn't believe.
Saab, don't fail me now.
Exactly.
Screw
right.
that. Yeah, that's a bag of nope right there. They're just always in such a pissy mood, Yeah. And they're always it's always this taunting kind of a thing. That's just it's nearly 100% of the time with those. So
yeah, it was totally taunting me, like, nana, you can't get me. And I was like, I'm out later.
I mean, you don't have any desire to have interactions with dogmen in the woods, right? There's no desire for that.
Not one desire whatsoever.
Good answer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of, encounters like Martin Groves where, and have you ever heard this at all in your outings with everyone? Are these metallic type sounds in the woods when there should be no damn metallic sounds like farm equipment or something really big and heavy being moved around, but it's metal? Have you ever heard of anything like that, or what do you make of that?
Well, I did hear. I haven't heard that. I've heard other people talk about it, and I knew somebody who had heard that before in the woods. And some of them said it was like coming from underground too.
Mm-hmm.
But my own personal experience, the only time I heard anything remotely like that is I had a group of people at the camp where the guy got the healing. We were out in that area. I called it Camp Broken Arrow. That was my spot for like 10 years. Anyway, I was in the Mount Hood National Forest, and I had a group of people with me, and this one friend of mine and I, we were all walking up this old skid road, and it went uphill, and off to the distance you could see a small little mountain covered with trees. Well, we were talking and walking ahead of the group, and we hear like a bell or something going ding, 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 coming from the top of that little mountain. And we stopped and we're like, what the heck? And the dinging went on for quite a little while. Well, then at one point we hear a hoo-ah from way off in the distance. And we stopped, and then about 20 seconds later, we heard another hoo-ah, and it had cut the distance in half from the first hoo-ah, because we couldn't see anything, but it just seemed like it was twice as close as it was before. So the rest of the group caught up to us, and I think we heard maybe 4 hoo-ah in a row, 4 or 5 maybe. And it was really close the last time we heard it. And we're like, well, let's walk back down to where our rig's parked. And we were all standing there in a circle, and we could hear these huffing noises all around us. And we weren't like in the middle of a bunch of trees at the time, but I mean, there were trees. We were on a Forest Service road. There were trees around, but it felt like we were surrounded by 4 or 5 beings giving us these huff noises.
Oh, and what about the strange tinging sound from the top of the mountain? What the hell's that?
I don't know. I mean, it stopped once we started hearing the hoo-ahs, the tinging noise ended. So I know that's a little bit deviated off of your question about the mechanical sounds, but
no, I mean, who knows if, it has to be tied in some way. It's like, it's saying, hey, they're here, there's people out here, and then everything else kind of fell into place and was activated at that point. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, I've got another one from when I was a kid in the haunted house. It was summertime, and I was on my top bunk. My brother slept on the bottom bunk. I can't remember if he was home that night or not. Well, I had the windows open because it was summertime, and right across our driveway was a field, and some years it was corn, some years it was, wheat, and, alternated every year, I think, on what they grew there. But I think the field had just been plowed recently. Well, it was summertime, so I can't remember. I'm not going to say for sure what the field looked like, but it was summertime, and I woke up. I heard this pounding, like a metal on metal noise, a ding, 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 or clang, clang, clang. And like somebody had a hammer beating on a piece of metal, and it woke me up. And so I'm laying there listening to it, and then I hear like an engine start up, and it was like this clickety clackety sound, like, oh my gosh, whoever's working on this tractor or whatever it is, that sounds like crap. Well, then I hear the banging on metal again for a while. It could have been 30 seconds, a minute long. And then I hear another engine start up, and it sounded like a diesel tractor that wasn't really running quite good. And it was, it sounded a little bit smoother than the first sound I heard. Well, then that engine shut off, and I heard the pounding on metal again. And then an engine started up, and it sounded like maybe a gas-powered car, because it was pretty smooth and sounded like, oh, okay, that sounds like they're fixing it, whatever they're doing. Well, that engine noise ended, turned off. I heard some more pounding on metal, and then I heard this most beautiful whirring, humming sound. And I went, in my mind, I was like, oh, whatever they did, they fixed it. It was like this most sweetest running little humming, whirring sound I've ever heard. And then that sound got a little bit louder and louder and louder, kind of went up, and then whoosh, it was gone.
Oh, that's weird. That's like you heard like 4 or 5 different vehicles somehow rolled into one, supposedly. That is very unique.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody else have that.
That's different. See, guys, and these are and thanks for, throwing that in too, because those are the little things, I say it all the time. Those are the little things like the that cool the fire columns story. If anybody is like, oh my goodness, I heard that similar thing on this, send it to me so I can send it to Jeff. Or if you've, my goodness, of course, had your own experience of anything, let me know.
Yes.
And again, you don't have to. It's not just. I'm not going to force you to. I don't force anybody to come on the show or anything. If you just want to say, hey, I actually had that similar experience, pass this on to Jeff. We would both appreciate that, because that's what all we can do is compare the data. So,
yeah, and that's why I've been sharing my stories. I'd like to get some answers. I mean, why not? And then maybe something I say can help somebody else who's struggling with something.
yes,
So I think it's good to share.
absolutely, absolutely. And Jeff, thanks for all your time today on a Saturday, taking all this time out. Now, this is up to you, of course. I don't know if you wanted to give out any social outlets or promote anything, or whatever you wanted to mention. Up to you. You don't have to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not on. I mean, I have an X account, but I don't really share that with people. I mean, I just kind of get on there to look around. And I'm not on Facebook or anything like that. But I would like to mention my friend Priscilla. She puts on the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon, coming up in July. I can't remember the exact date, but she's opening a Bigfoot museum right in Oak Ridge off of Highway 58. So that's going to be opening soon. And it's called Area 58 Museum. And you can find her on YouTube at Area 58 Museum. She doesn't have any videos up yet, but we're going to start doing like a monthly live stream from the museum and talk Bigfoot and other paranormal stuff. That's coming up here pretty soon. She's going to open up.
Well, I'll make sure to link all that in the show notes. Yeah, tell Priscilla congratulations. And she's seen Bigfoot herself?
She has.
Oh, cool. Well, maybe
Yes.
Priscilla
And
needs to come on.
Yeah, she might. Her dad would love to talk to you. Ronnie Rosen, he's a longtime Bigfooter. He knew Peter Byrne and a lot of these folks like that. And
That
he's
name
had some
sounds
crazy
familiar.
stuff happen in the woods.
Well, I mean, two birds, one stone. They can come on and promote the museum opening, and I can get some more Bigfoot chatter, which I love so much. So, yeah, just let her know. It's not a rush or anything, but huge congrats to her on the museum out there. That's so cool.
Yeah. And a group of us were just in the woods at Ronnie's spot up out of Oak Ridge, Oregon, a week or two ago, and we heard these strange wood knockings sounds.
What do you mean by strange?
Well, they were like wood knocks, but they didn't sound like your normal wood knocking. They were more like a hollow sound, but a full sound at the same time. It's really hard to describe. And my friend Alicia actually got the audio of it on her phone. And so now that's kind of that audio is being passed around a little bit. And a couple of people we know put it on a spectrogram, and they're saying that there's actually language and possible samurai chatter in the audio.
Oh, so they were actually maybe making these sounds with their mouths?
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more on that.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. You're welcome on anytime, and let's keep in touch, please.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for having me on, Shannon. Appreciate it.